President Vladimir Zelensky addressed the UN Security Council today, emphasizing both his call to hold Russia accountable for war crimes and his pleas for more support from the UN to help fight the ongoing war. Joining me now to discuss this is FRC's Executive Vice President, Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, a founding member of the Army's elite Delta Force and former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, who in 1997 was tasked with capturing war criminals in the Balkans. General, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you very much, Tony. I'm glad to be with you.
General, let me ask you this question. Does the evidence that we are seeing suggest there are prosecutable war crimes in Ukraine?
Yeah, as I compare this to what I saw in the Balkans when I was trying to run down the war criminals, there is no question in my mind this is, in fact, war crimes. This is the deliberate targeting of not only unarmed civilians or non-combatants, as they're called, but it is also the targeting of places that are not supposed to be targeted by international law, like schools and hospitals and so forth. So I don't think there is any question that you have massive amounts of war crimes that are being conducted here.
So, General, what then are the next steps?
What needs to happen now is that the United Nations, and the U.S. has to be part of that, needs to start doing investigations as quickly as possible. And that's going to take some period of time because they have to find eyewitnesses that are in fact people that are ultimately willing to testify in court. And then they need to ensure that in the case of a bombing of a civilian target, for example, an airplane drops a bomb on it, that there were no other targets close by. And the reason is because they can simply say, well, it was collateral damage. We were actually bombing the ammo depot down at the end of the block. So they've got to do those two things, and they've got to have eyewitness accounts that ultimately will result in what we would consider to be an indictment, and then a warrant. Essentially, they may call it something different, but it's a warrant. And then you go after those people, and that's what we were doing in the Balkans. Was the task force that I ran was 5 nations, and we had all agreed to go after these war criminals, and we went after war criminals from the 3 warring factions, and we brought many of them to The Hague for trial. And as I have probably mentioned to you before, a couple of them decided they wanted to fight it out, and they didn't make it to The Hague.
General, one final question for you. What we have seen coming out of Bucha and other places is that there were, people, civilians, looks like executed. If these orders came down from, we don't know how high up they may have come from. Maybe they were at the just basic company level or squad level. Regardless, there's going to be accountability all the way up to whoever allowed this, ordered it, and those who actually pulled the trigger. Is that correct?
Yep. It goes back to 1946 when Douglas MacArthur went to the Philippines to try General Homa and General Yamashita. And Yamashita just swore that he didn't know what was going on in the Philippines. He didn't know anything about the atrocities, about the Bataan Death March, for example. But they hung him, and they killed his cohort, General Homa, as well, by firing squad. But that became known as the Yamashita extension. And what it was basically saying was that you were the commander. You were the senior-most person. You should have known. If you didn't, it's incompetence on your part.
General Boykin, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise and experience with us today.
Thank you, Tony.